I'm Lonna Kelly, and this is Hudson Valley Art Speak. Thank you for watching today. We're going to do something a little bit different today. I don't have an artist here. I have a writer here, and Brian Kelly is a freelance writer. He started out in working corporate, and he's gone through a couple of different I'm having a hard time explaining, Brian, what you do, how you transitioned from corporate to total freelance and all the things that came in between. I know you started off, you were working in the comic book industry.
Right after college. My first job out of college was I was working writing books for collectors, books for comic collectors. In the early 90s, comic collecting was at an all-time high, and people were getting huge sums of money for their old comic books. So there was a need for price guides, collector's guides, and we had 3 or 4 magazines given. Some would publish monthly, some would publish bi-monthly, following the trends in that collecting realm. And that was my first experience as a professional paid writer, and I was an editor there. Before that, I had done a lot of free writing, like in college and high school for the college newspaper and the high school newspaper. And I can tell aspiring writers that's something you should definitely do, is immediately get involved if you're younger with your high school newspaper, your high school yearbook, your college newspaper, your college yearbook, because when you first come out of college, people are going to want to see things you've written,
right,
and things that have been published, and there you have clips, you have something to show.
How important do you think it is to take journalism or English or a topic in college that leads into that, or is liberal arts more appropriate?
I found that liberal arts were more appropriate, and my activities in clubs were actually much more important in establishing myself as a career in those clubs being the poetry club, the history club, and the newspaper and the radio. The newspaper, the poetry club, the history club all afforded me the opportunity to be published. The newspaper, being a weekly newspaper, taught me deadlines. Journalism classes are good as far as I can go, but I mean, I can tell you what you're going to learn in a journalism class right now. The 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why.
Yeah.
That's a journalism class. Better, I think, to have a classic liberal arts education where you read Twain, you read Melville, you learn history, and so you bring a lot of different knowledge to the table every time you interview a different person.
Yeah, I think it's really critical to if you're going to be a writer, to also be a reader. To read. I read a lot of current fiction rather than classic fiction, and try to read newspaper articles and things like that, so that you're aware of the different writing styles, and you're keeping current with what's going on. Especially today,
because right now we're at a unique juncture in the English language where social media, blogging, texting is changing the face of the English language at a much more rapid rate than it's ever happened in history before. There's words today being thrown around like blogosphere that didn't even exist 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
And there's if I say LOL, everybody knows exactly what I mean, but that didn't exist a couple of years ago. So you must remain current. You must read current writers. And it's especially good to read things that might not particularly be in your field, whatever your field may be, just so you see how people are conversing today. Because any language is a living, breathing language, but the rate of change right now is much higher than it's ever been before, which is very interesting to me.
What about you mentioned LOL and the different abbreviations that people use online and now. Do you think that that's going to move more into more formal writing, that you'll be seeing more of it in articles and
It won't be moving into more formal articles. you're not going to see it in the New York Times.
Right.
And you're not going to see it in an IBM brochure. But you will see it in, say, a software company or a local bakery. If the person that owns that is writing a blog, you will see that sort of language used in the blog. As a freelance writer, I'm often called on to write blogs for people. So that is an area where it's appropriate to use that. I mean, normally you steer away from jargon and slang, but I mean, social media and the blogosphere is really changing the way we communicate.
Well, it's certainly changing the way people promote themselves. You know, you and I had talked a little bit about different avenues of promotion, and one of the things we talked about was Facebook,
Right.
and how it's it's actually a kind of a dangerous place for younger people, and maybe for older people too, who sometimes post inappropriate pictures or comments, and that really come back to haunt them.
It's a double-edged sword, Facebook, absolutely. My advice to younger people right now who might be engaged in social media is don't use your real name. Don't use your whole name. I mean, I have two nieces who just graduated from very prestigious universities, Penn State and Southern Carolina State University, who all through their college career used their first and their middle name rather than their complete name. So then they could post pictures of their keg parties and the things that kids do while they're in college. And now, as they're moving into the business world, make no mistake about it, businesses are checking your Facebook page.
Absolutely.
Businesses are checking your social media status. So now, as they move into the business world, those activities, those pictures they posted do not appear on the business's radar because they've got another Facebook page that has their professional name and that has nothing in there except the wonderful things they did during college.
Right.
And they don't have their sorority sisters or dorm mates or anything on those pages. When I moved from corporate to freelance, I was an early adopter of Facebook. I was an early adopter of MySpace. I was an early adopter of Twitter, excuse me, because I had to be, because I'm in marketing and people use that for marketing. Now, when I was in the corporate world and I was on Facebook and I thought that I was going to be in the corporate world forever, I would post pictures of family parties and so on and so forth, events that I'd gone to, baseball games, and for me, usually at a function like that, I've got a beer near me, or a beer in my hand. Not loaded, but taken as a whole, if you looked at my Facebook page and there was 120 pictures, 90 of them, there was a beer someplace in the picture. So when I moved from the corporate world to the freelance world, I got rid of those pictures. And I left lots of pictures in from those same exact events, but the beers were out of it. That's one way you can cleanse your social media image.
And how about LinkedIn? I know that you use that a lot.
Heavily.
You get a lot of work through there?
Yes. Yes, I use LinkedIn heavily, and one of the ways to use LinkedIn to your advantage, and sorry LinkedIn, but you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay the premium. Is there are many LinkedIn groups that address your business, your area of expertise. There's many copywriting groups for me, for many marketing groups. I join them all. And occasionally I will post in a conversation. Nothing controversial or anything, just to keep my LinkedIn profile higher, top of mind. I endorse people a lot. And when you endorse people, I mean, it's just as simple as, it takes 10 minutes. It's just as simple as when you click onto LinkedIn, it says, does Lonna Kelly know about photography? And I click yes. Now, when I endorse you for a skill that I know you're good at, that also sort of puts the ball back in your court, and most people will endorse you back.
Yes, I almost feel like it's an obligation. If
Yep.
somebody endorses me, I have to go and look at them and say, oh, well, what do I know that they do that I know that they do well?
Right.
Yeah.
And now the value of that, the value of the endorsements, is that then when a hiring firm or a corporation or just simply somebody is looking for a writer or a photographer, and they do a search on certain skills, you have you've done search engine optimization,
Right.
and made yourself more searchable, more visible by having X amount of endorsements in a given area.
So let me just go back to something else that we had talked about earlier, and that is when if somebody is getting into the writing business and wants to do freelance writing, and they're getting approached by people, what do you do? How do you have a contract? Do you sit down and talk to them? How do you set things up so that you're not doing more, you're not doing less?
Right.
How do you set that up?
Well, for freelance writers and freelance copywriters in general, every engagement is different. And one of the problems with being a writer and a freelance writer is that everybody thinks they can write.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of competition out there from a lot of very intelligent people
Yeah.
who might have 35-year-old English degrees sitting on their wall,
Right.
that think, oh, I might want to start writing again. So every engagement is different. But what we normally do is if somebody speaks to me about a writing engagement, we work out the scope of work involved. And there's some jobs people will load me up with research. Other jobs I have to go out and do the research to actually produce the piece, be it a case study, an article, a brochure, an annual report.
Yeah.
And that's how you charge people on a sliding scale. The more research involved, the higher the price is.
Right.
You can't be scared to price yourself high. If you come in and you price yourself low, people will not respect you.
Right. Right.
And there's a fine line. You've always been told never to bring up money in an interview and never do that.
Right. Yes.
Well, I'm counter to that. After the initial conversation, at some point I say, what's your budget for writing?
Right. And then you have an idea of
Right.
whether or not they fit into your budget. And
Right.
believe it or
Exactly.
not, we've come to the end of our time. So Brian, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And your website is?
www.candlewoodcreative.com.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Take care.